AITA for moving on after my wife tried to control me by withholding intimacy? I guess I should start from the beginning. I'm a 34-year-old guy, and it feels a little strange writing all this out. But if it stops someone else from walking into the same mess I did, then it's worth it. In the beginning, things between Claire and me were great. We met at my buddy's housewarming party. She was a college friend of his girlfriend. I almost didn't even go that night. I had a huge presentation at work the next day. But my friend insisted. It's funny how a single decision can change everything. From our very first date, I was completely upfront with her about what I was looking for. I've never been one for games. If I'm into someone, I tell them. If not, I tell them that too. Some women don't appreciate that kind of directness, but Claire seemed to find it refreshing. We dated for about a year and a half before I proposed. Our wedding wasn't some big, flashy event, just our closest friends and family at a nice cabin her parents rented up at the lake for a weekend. I remember thinking I had hit the jackpot. She was beautiful, intelligent, had a solid career of her own, and seemed to genuinely respect what I brought to the table. The first 5 years were solid, genuinely happy. We had a system that just worked. I handled the typical guy stuff around the house, fixing leaky faucets, mowing the lawn, keeping our cars running, and managing our investments. I made good money as a software developer, so I covered the mortgage and most of the bills, even though she also worked. She handled the cooking, kept the house looking great, and was the mastermind behind our social calendar. It might sound traditional, but it was our rhythm, and we were happy. We were that couple our friends liked to hang out with because we never had those cringy public arguments. We kept our issues private and handled them like adults. If I thought she was being unreasonable, I'd tell her, and she'd usually see my side. If she had a problem with me, I'd listen and make a change if it made sense. One thing I was always firm about from day one was maintaining my independence. I hit the gym 5 times a week, never missed my poker night with my buddies every other Thursday, and kept up with my own hobbies. She had her girls' nights and her yoga classes. We didn't need to be attached at the hip 24/7 to know we were committed. "You're my rock," she used to say all the time. I'd never felt so secure with anyone. But looking back, there were tiny cracks I chose to ignore. The way she'd get quiet if I made plans without running them by her first. Or the little passive-aggressive comments she'd make if I was texting someone and laughed. "Who's so funny?" she'd ask in a tone that was trying way too hard to sound casual. But it happened so rarely that I just brushed it off. I remember one time, maybe 3 years into the marriage, I got a text from a female coworker about a project around 9:30 at night. Totally professional, just work stuff. My wife asked who it was. I told her the truth. She made a joke like, "Should I be worried?" I laughed it off. She was already testing the waters. Another time, I had a business trip to Seattle for a conference. It was supposed to be 3 days, but I managed to wrap everything up in 2. I flew home a day early to surprise her. She seemed happy, but for a split second, I saw a flash of disappointment in her eyes, as if I had just crashed a solo evening she had planned. Again, I didn't let myself think anything of it. I thought we were unshakable. My career was on the upswing. We'd just bought a house in a great neighborhood. We were even talking about maybe having a kid in a year or 2. I was holding up my end of the deal. I was in good shape. I'm 6'2", weighed about 210 pounds, probably around 15% body fat back then. I was providing, and I thought I had a partner who had my back. I couldn't have been more wrong. The real trouble started when a recruiter contacted me about a senior developer position at a hot new tech startup. The salary was nearly double what I was making. Stock options, the whole 9 yards. It was the kind of opportunity that could set you up for an early retirement if the company took off. When I told Claire about it, she seemed thrilled for me. She threw her arms around me and even planned a special dinner to celebrate. "You deserve this," she said, raising her wine glass. "All your hard work is finally paying off." So, I started at the new company, and it was everything the recruiter promised. The office was incredible, standing desks, a kitchen stocked with free snacks and drinks, even a gym in the building. My team was a group of all-stars. These were smart, driven people who knew their stuff, a huge change from my old job where I felt like I was carrying the entire department on my back. The first few weeks were intense, but in a good way. I'd come home buzzing with excitement about the projects I was working on. I told Claire all about the cool things we were building, and the money was insane. When my first paycheck hit our account, I took her to a high-end steakhouse we usually only save for our anniversary. We had great wine, a huge meal, the works. She seemed genuinely happy, asking smart questions about my work and really taking an interest. She even surprised me with a new leather laptop bag because my old one was falling apart. I remember thinking how lucky I was to have a partner who was so supportive of my career. Then, things began to change, slowly at first. At the new company, the whole team would go out for drinks after our big Thursday sprint review. It was just a casual thing, a couple of hours to decompress and talk about something other than code. The first time I told her about it, I saw her brow furrow just a little. Every Thursday? Like a regular thing? Yeah, it's just what the team does. I'll probably be home around 7:30 or 8. She made a little non-committal sound and dropped it. I didn't push. The second week, I texted her that we were wrapping up and heading to the bar down the street. She replied almost instantly, "Who's going?" I just texted back, "The whole team." When I got home that night, she was waiting for me. Not in a sweet, welcoming way. More in an arms crossed, sitting in a dark living room kind of way. "Did you have fun?" she asked, her voice tight. "Yeah, it was fine. Just a couple of beers and some shop talk." Shop talk with Madison, too? A tiny alarm bell went off in my head. Madison was a designer on my team I'd mentioned a couple of times. Nothing major, just a coworker. "Yeah, she's on the team." "What?" "Just wondering who my husband is spending his Thursday nights with now." I actually laughed. We'd been married for 5 years, and she had never shown a jealous bone in her body. I figured she was just having a bad day. But it didn't stop. From then on, if I mentioned any woman from work, it was followed by an interrogation. What does she look like? How old is she? Is she single? I started noticing her picking up my phone when I was in the shower, glancing at my texts, even my work Slack messages. It got to the point where I almost dreaded talking about my job because I knew it would just turn into her looking for evidence of something that wasn't happening. And the thing is, there was nothing to find. I have never cheated on anyone in my life. It's a line I just don't cross. About 2 months into the new job, I was put on a major project with a tight deadline. It was me and 4 other developers, including a woman named Sarah, our backend specialist. For a few weeks, we had to work late some nights, usually until 7 or 8, to fix some critical issues. It was standard for the industry. Just work. Claire completely lost it. Why does it have to be you staying late? Don't they have junior developers for that? I tried to explain that's not how software development works, but she wouldn't listen. She started texting me constantly when I was at work. "Where are you? Who are you with? When are you coming home?" It became so disruptive that my team lead pulled me aside one day and asked if everything was okay at home. Despite all this, I tried to be more attentive to calm her fears. I started bringing her flowers after a late night at the office to show her I was thinking of her. In the mornings, I'd leave her little notes telling her she was the only one for me. I cut back on the team drinks. I'd come straight home and deliberately give her a play-by-play of my day so she'd know I had nothing to hide. I was desperate for her to feel secure, to know that she was my priority. But it was like she wasn't even listening. The project lasted 3 weeks. By the end of it, she was barely speaking to me, except to make sarcastic comments about my work wife, Sarah. And for the record, Sarah was in her mid-40s, happily married with 3 teenagers, and looked absolutely nothing like the fantasy homewrecker Claire had invented in her mind. One night, out of the blue, she said, "I think you should start looking for another job." I nearly choked on my pasta. What? Why would I do that? This place isn't good for our marriage. You're never home, you're always stressed, and the environment there is inappropriate. Inappropriate? What are you talking about? You know exactly what I'm talking about. All those women you work with. All those late nights and happy hours. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I was making almost twice what I had before. The work was challenging and fulfilling. My career was finally taking off, and she wanted me to throw it all away because of her paranoia about me working with other women. I laughed. I told her flat out, "This is the best career opportunity I've ever had. I'm not quitting because of some paranoid fantasy you've cooked up in your head." That lit the fuse. We had our first real, knockdown, drag-out screaming match. She accused me of choosing my job over our marriage. I accused her of trying to sabotage my career because of her own insecurities. It wasn't my finest moment, but I was at my wit's end. After that night, things got even worse. She started giving me the silent treatment. If I tried to kiss her goodbye in the morning, she'd turn her cheek. If I reached for her in bed, she'd move to the far edge of the mattress, always with a parting shot like, "I'm sure Sarah would be thrilled." Meanwhile, I was still doing everything a husband is supposed to do. I took care of the yard, did repairs around the house, and paid all the bills on time. I even tried to plan date nights, which she almost always found a lame excuse to cancel. I was bending over backward to prove I was the same man she married. One Friday, I ducked out of work early to surprise her. I'd made reservations at her favorite Italian place. The whole evening was planned. I walked in the door and found her at the computer, scrolling through my work emails, which I'd foolishly left open. "What are you doing?" I asked, the bouquet of flowers I'd bought still in my hand. She didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. She just pointed at the screen, at a completely harmless email exchange between me and a female product manager. "Who's Emily? You never mentioned an Emily." In that moment, I knew this wasn't just jealousy. This was an obsession, and it was spinning out of control. I should have drawn a line right then, insisted on couples counseling or something. But instead, I just kept trying to prove my innocence, to reassure her, to be the perfect husband in the face of her increasingly irrational behavior. That was a huge mistake. A person who is determined to find evidence of cheating will find it, even if they have to invent it themselves. Our home life descended into a nightmare. She checked my phone constantly now, without even trying to hide it. The second a notification lit up my screen, she'd demand to know who it was. If I put my phone face down on the counter, she'd use it as an opportunity to ask, "Hiding something?" I started to feel like I was being hunted in my own house. Every conversation was a minefield. If I talked about work, she grew suspicious. If I didn't talk about it, she accused me of being secretive. I couldn't win. One night, I was in the shower when my phone buzzed. When I got out, she was standing there, phone in her hand, her face a mask of fury. "Who is Emily? And why is she texting you at 9:30 at night?" I let out a long sigh, a towel wrapped around my waist. "Emily is the project manager. She's texting the entire team about tomorrow's presentation. If you scroll up, you'll see it's an 8-person group chat. Well, I think it's unprofessional to be sending messages that late. It's literally about work." She threw my phone onto the bed and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I just stood there, dripping on the floor, wondering what had happened to the woman I married. I tried everything. I told her she could look at my phone whenever she wanted. I invited her to company happy hours so she could meet my coworkers. I came straight home from the office every single day, even skipping my gym sessions. Nothing worked. Her friends even tried to talk some sense into her. Her best friend, Leah, came over for a glass of wine one night, and I overheard her telling Claire, "You're being ridiculous. He's always been crazy about you. You're creating problems where there aren't any." But the more people told her she was wrong, the more she doubled down. She was on a mission to prove I was a cheater, and if she couldn't find the proof, she was going to create it. About 4 months into the new job, the whole situation finally imploded. It was a Thursday. I texted her that we had just wrapped a huge project and the team was going for a celebratory drink. It was nothing out of the ordinary. We'd done it a dozen times, and I was always home by 8:30. Her reply was ice cold. "Do whatever you want. You always do anyway." I almost didn't go, but my team lead insisted I come for at least one drink, since I'd led the project. So I went. One beer. Then I went home. It was barely 7:15 when I walked through the door. She was sitting at the kitchen table, arms crossed. "Have fun with your little work friends." The sarcasm was thick. It was fine. Just one drink. We shipped the project. I'm sure shipping the project wasn't the only thing you were celebrating. I took a deep breath, trying to hold on to my patience. What is that supposed to mean? You know exactly what it means. Don't play dumb with me. I was tired. I was exhausted from months of this constant suspicion. No, actually, I don't. Why don't you spell it out for me? She stood up and walked over until she was standing right in front of me. Fine. I think you're sleeping with someone from work. Probably Madison or Sarah or one of the others you talk about. I burst out laughing. Not because it was funny, but because it was so utterly absurd. Do you honestly think I have the time or the energy to have an affair when I can barely have a normal conversation with my own wife without it turning into an interrogation? I work 50 hours a week. I come home to this toxic environment every night. And you think I'm somehow squeezing in an affair? People make time for what they care about, she shot back. I shook my head. This is insane. I haven't done anything. Not a single thing. I got a better job that benefits both of us. and that somehow makes me the villain. If it was just about the money, you could find another job that pays just as well. There's obviously something else keeping you there. That was it. That was the moment I realized she was too far gone. No amount of evidence or explanation would ever change her mind. I am not quitting my job, I said, my voice sharp and final. It's not happening. And you need to get a handle on these insecurities because this is not sustainable. Her eyes narrowed. And then she delivered the ultimatum. Listen to me. If you don't do what I say and quit that job, you can forget about me. No more bedroom activities until you do exactly what I tell you. The choice is yours. I just stared at her, waiting for the absurdity of what she'd just said to sink in. She stood there, arms crossed, chin up, completely convinced that I would fold. She thought her little power play would work, that I'd beg and plead and promise to do whatever she wanted just to earn back her affection. And in that instant, something inside me just snapped. This wasn't a simple argument. This was a pattern. This was a desperate, manipulative grab for control disguised as a marital issue. And I had let it go on for far too long. I laughed, a real, genuine laugh, which clearly threw her off. What's so funny? She snapped. I leaned back against the counter and met her gaze. Perfect. Keep it that way forever. Silence. She just blinked, waiting for me to take it back, to say I was just angry. But I wasn't angry. I wasn't even hurt anymore. I was just done. I stood up, grabbed my phone, and walked out of the kitchen. For the first time in our entire relationship, I felt no need to explain myself, no desire to smooth things over. Let her sit with that. Let her see that this time, her tactics had failed. I went into our bedroom, grabbed a pillow and a blanket, and made a bed for myself in the guest room. She didn't follow me. She probably thought I just needed to cool off, that I'd be back in an hour to apologize like I always did. Maybe she thought I'd try to negotiate, to find a compromise. But she didn't have anything I wanted anymore. Lying there in the spare bed, staring at the ceiling, I let the reality sink in. I wasn't afraid of losing her anymore. I was relieved. That night changed everything. Not because of her ultimatum, but because of what I had finally realized. I deserved better than this, and I was done trying to prove my loyalty to someone who was determined to see me as the bad guy. The next morning, I woke up in the guest bed feeling different. Colder. Like a switch had been flipped inside me that could never be unflipped. All those months of accusations, all those nights, she made me feel guilty for no reason. It was payback time. I got up, showered, and put on one of my best button-down shirts. She was in the kitchen, coffee mug in hand, with a smug little look on her face. She was completely convinced I was about to come crawling back. She cleared her throat. So, are you done with your little tantrum? I took a slow sip of my own coffee, looking at her over the rim of the mug. Then I smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was a smile that said, "You have no idea how badly you just messed up." Yeah, actually I am. Her eyes narrowed. She didn't get it. She was waiting for the apology, the negotiation. But I said nothing. I finished my coffee, rinsed out the mug, and deliberately left it in the sink instead of putting it in the dishwasher. Then I grabbed my keys and walked out the door without another word. In my car, I started laughing. The look of utter confusion on her face was priceless. For the first time, she wasn't in control of the situation, and it felt incredible. From that day forward, I made it my mission to give her a taste of her own medicine. She wanted to play games? Fine. I was a much better player. I stopped doing all the little things that made her life easier. No more running her errands. No more filling up her car with gas. No more fixing the little household things that bugged her. The wobbly leg on the dining room chair? Not my problem anymore. The weird rattling noise the dishwasher was making? She could learn to live with it. She wanted to stop pulling her weight in the marriage, so I stopped pulling mine. I did my own laundry and left hers in the hamper. I cooked for myself and only for myself. I cleaned up my own messes and nothing more. I went grocery shopping and bought only the things I liked to eat. At first, she tried to pretend it didn't bother her. She'd roll her eyes or let out a loud, dramatic sigh. But I could see it was getting under her skin. She was used to being the one who withheld things, not the one being denied them. A week later, she tried to get a rise out of me. I was watching a basketball game when she came and sat on the other end of the couch, all theatrical. "So, this is how it's going to be now? What are you talking about?" I asked, my eyes glued to the screen. "You, giving me the silent treatment. Ignoring me. I'm not ignoring you. I'm watching the game." My tone was flat. Zero emotion. right? Because this feels a lot like being ignored. I'm just done wasting my energy on pointless arguments. Her jaw tightened. So, because you didn't get what you wanted, you're going to act like a child. That made me chuckle, which only made her angrier. No, this is just me not caring anymore. She wasn't prepared for that. She was still expecting me to explain myself, to make excuses, to try. But I gave her nothing. And it was delicious. The real fun started a few days later. I got home from work, cooked myself a perfect steak, nothing for her, and washed my one plate and fork. She was standing by the sink, just watching me, waiting for me to crack. That was usually the moment I would have caved. I would have made a joke or said something to break the tension. Not this time. I finished drying my hands, walked right past her without a word, without even a glance in her direction. The look on her face was a masterpiece. Her favorite weapon, guilt, was completely ineffective. I started focusing entirely on myself, partly because I needed to, and partly to rub it in her face. I got my sleep schedule dialed in. I claimed the guest room as my own space, bought new sheets and a memory foam pillow, and started sleeping better than I had in years. Waking up refreshed at 5:30 in the morning, knowing it annoyed her, was a small, sweet victory. I leveled up my workouts too. I set up a small gym in the garage and blasted my music just loud enough for her to hear. With every rep, it felt like I was shedding another layer of her control. I overhauled my wardrobe, getting rid of my boring old clothes and buying stuff that actually made me look and feel good. I'd get dressed up just to go grab a coffee on a Saturday, knowing it would make her wonder where I was going. And she noticed. I'd catch her staring at me after a workout or asking where I was headed on a weekend. I'd just say, out, and leave her to stew in her own anxiety. Then, I really ramped it up. I started going out more. I was barely home, and when I was in my room or the garage, anywhere but where she was. Every time I walked out the door, I could practically feel her anxiety spiking, and I have to be honest, it felt good. The more I focused on my own happiness, the less I cared about hers. And that's when she started to panic. She was losing her grip on me, and she had no idea how to handle it. The old tricks of guilt, accusations, and withholding affection were useless now. I just didn't care. I wasn't playing her game anymore. I was playing my own, and she wasn't invited. She tried doubling down, giving me the silent treatment for days on end, thinking that if she held out long enough, I'd break. But days turned into weeks. I'd never been happier, and she was visibly falling apart. Her little power trip was blowing up in her face. Then came the change in her strategy. It started one Saturday night. I was getting ready to go out, dressed in a new shirt, looking sharp. She appeared in the doorway of my room. "Are you going out again?" For the first time, I heard a new note in her voice, desperation. I glanced up from putting on my watch. "Yeah. With who?" The question tumbled out before she could stop it. I gave her a small, tight smile as I adjusted my collar. "What difference does it make?" That one hit her hard. I saw her flinch, her hand tightening on the doorframe. For months, I had given her just enough rope to hang herself with her own paranoia. "I just think it's weird, that's all. You never used to go out this much." I turned to face her, my expression completely blank. "I used to do a lot of things that I don't do anymore." She just stood there, waiting for more, but there was nothing. I grabbed my keys, walked past her, and left. The look in her eyes was almost worth everything she'd put me through. A few days later, I came home from work to find her wearing a dress she knew was my favorite. Her hair was done, her makeup was perfect. She had cleaned the entire house, cooked my favorite meal, and even bought the expensive bourbon I liked, the one she always complained about. "I figured we could have a nice night in," she said, trying to sound casual, but the panic was seeping through her voice. "Not hungry," I said, grabbing a protein bar from the pantry. I already ate with the guys after work. I hadn't eaten anything, but watching her stare at the elaborate meal she'd made as I walked out of the kitchen was incredibly satisfying. It was petty, maybe, but her "you do what I say" had been a slap in the face. It was as if she saw me as a dog to be trained, not a partner. She wanted control, I wanted my freedom. That was where the line had been drawn. Throughout all this, her best friend, Leah, had been coming over more often, supposedly to see Claire. They'd talk for hours, and I'm sure my wife was venting about me. But I started noticing that Leah always found an excuse to talk to me one-on-one. At first, I thought she was just trying to mediate, but one day, I was working on my car in the garage when Leah walked in with 2 coffees. She handed one to me and leaned against my workbench. After a bit of small talk, she said, "You know, she's a total mess." I just shrugged, keeping my eyes on the engine. Not my problem. She knows she messed up. She just doesn't know how to fix it. I looked up at her then. There's nothing to fix. She showed me exactly who she is, and I believe her. There was a moment of silence. Then she said it. "I told her from the beginning she was going to lose you if she kept this up." "You're a smart woman," I replied. Leah studied me for a second. "You've changed," she said. It wasn't an accusation, just an observation. I had to. "No, I mean you seem stronger. More confident." She took a sip of her coffee. "It looks good on you." There was a certain tone in her voice, something I'd never noticed before. Leah was an attractive woman, arguably more so than Claire. We'd always been friendly but distant, out of respect for my marriage. But now, I was seeing things I had been blind to. The way her eyes would linger a second too long. The way she'd find little reasons to touch my arm. The fact that she was suddenly dropping by a lot more since my marriage started imploding. Our conversations became more frequent. At first, they were about Claire, but then they shifted to other things. Books, our jobs, movies. One evening, she came over when Claire wasn't home, with the flimsy excuse of dropping something off, though she arrived empty-handed. We ended up talking in the kitchen for nearly an hour. As she was leaving, she put her hand on my arm as she laughed at something I said. The touch lasted just a fraction of a second too long. I looked into her eyes, and there was no mistaking the message. I took a small step back. "We shouldn't go there." She looked down at her feet. "I know. I'm sorry. It's just watching her treat you this way, knowing what kind of man you are. I'm still married," I said quietly. "Unhappily, but still married." She nodded. "I get it. For what it's worth, you deserve better." After she left, I thought about how Claire would react if she knew her own best friend had a thing for me. A small, dark part of me wanted to tell her, just to watch her world crumble. But I didn't. Not for Claire's sake, but for my own. It would have just made me look like the bad guy and handed her the ammunition she'd been searching for all along. The irony was suffocating. For months, she'd accused me of being interested in other women. And now, here was real temptation, right under her own roof, from her own best friend. And I was the one shutting it down. But the craziest part was that the more emotionally distant I became, the more physical Claire tried to be. After weeks of using intimacy as a weapon, she was now trying to use it to lure me back. There were accidental brushes against me in the kitchen, more revealing outfits around the house. One night, she even came into the guest room, my room, wearing next to nothing. I calmly but firmly told her to get out. "Why?" she asked, her voice trembling, completely thrown by my rejection. "I'm your wife. You made the terms very clear," I reminded her. "I chose not to follow your orders. Now we both have to live with that choice." Her eyes filled with tears. "Are you seeing someone else?" "No," I said. "It was the truth." "Then why won't you even try to fix this?" "Because there's nothing left to fix. This is about respect. You tried to control me by using our physical relationship as a bargaining chip. That told me everything I need to know about who you are." She left the room sobbing. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened, but I could see the panic in her eyes. She was completely out of cards to play. The final test came when I had to go on a 3-day business trip. In the past, she would have bombarded me with texts and calls, demanding video chats to prove where I was. But this time, she was terrified I just wouldn't come back. The night before I left, she made one last, desperate attempt. She made dinner, put on music. "I thought we could have a nice evening before you leave." She was trying so hard to be casual and failing miserably. "I have to pack." "Can I help?" she offered, a little too quickly. "I've got it. It's only 3 days." As I walked away, I heard her whisper, so quietly I almost missed it. "You are coming back, right?" I paused at the doorway and looked back at her. "I have a return ticket." The morning after I got back from my trip, I knew what I had to do. I waited for her to leave for work. I called a divorce attorney. I took a half day off from the office, met with the lawyer that afternoon, and got the paperwork started. It felt surprisingly easy, like taking off a heavy coat I didn't realize I'd been wearing for months. That evening, when she came home, I was sitting at the kitchen table. She knew something was wrong the second she saw me. I saw her freeze in the doorway. "We need to talk," I said, motioning to the chair across from me. She sat down slowly, her whole body tense. What's going on? I decided to just rip off the Band-Aid. I met with a lawyer today. I'm filing for divorce. All the color drained from her face. She just stared at me, her mouth slightly open, as if I were speaking another language. Then came the flood of emotions: shock, denial, anger, pleading. You can't be serious, she whispered. I'm dead serious. But why? Over one fight? Because I asked you to think about changing jobs. I almost laughed. This wasn't about one fight, Claire. This was about months of suspicion, manipulation, emotional blackmail, and you trying to weaponize our relationship. You showed me who you are, and I believe you. We can fix this, she said, her hand reaching across the table. I pulled my arm back before she could touch me. We can go to counseling. I'll change. I know I've been insecure, but I can work on it. It's too late. I don't want to be in this marriage anymore. Tears started streaming down her face. So that's it. You're just giving up on us. On all these years. I shook my head. No. For the first time, I'm choosing myself. That hit her like a physical blow. She recoiled, looking at me like I was a complete stranger. And maybe I was. At least, this version of me was the one who no longer bent to her will. Once she realized I was serious, her behavior became erratic. Some days she would scream at me that I was ruining her life for no reason. Other days she would break down sobbing, begging me to take her back. Then she started a smear campaign, telling our friends and her family that I had cheated on her. Most of them didn't buy it, but a few did. Her sister called me, yelling about how I could have an affair with Leah, of all people. I chuckled. There is absolutely nothing going on with Leah or anyone else. Your sister is making things up to avoid facing the truth. When she asked what the real reason was, I told her. Because she tried to control me using intimacy as a weapon. Because she didn't trust me. And I'm done. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I didn't know that. Go ask your sister about it, I said. She never called me again. The divorce process was messier than I could have imagined. She fought me on every single thing. The house, our savings, even possessions that were clearly mine from before we were married. Her lawyer sent over absurd settlement demands, probably hoping I'd give in just to make it all stop. But I wasn't that guy anymore. I stood my ground, held firm on what was fair, and refused to budge. And then there was Leah. When Claire found out that Leah had been talking to me alone, she completely lost it. She accused us both of having an affair for years. It was a complete fabrication, of course, but she needed a villain, and Leah was the perfect target. Leah called me after a huge blowout fight with Claire. I'm so sorry. I never meant to make things worse. It just drove me crazy watching how she was treating you. It's not your fault, I told her. She would have found something else to fixate on. Just before we hung up, she whispered, "You deserve better." I moved out before the divorce was even finalized. I couldn't stand being in that house anymore, with the constant cycle of tears, accusations, and begging. I found a small one-bedroom apartment near my office. I packed my things while she was staying with her parents. When she found out I was really gone, she somehow got my new address and showed up at my door, a complete wreck. She stood there crying, saying I couldn't just leave, that she meant more than that. She apologized again and again, pleading for a second chance. But this wasn't about a second chance. This was a pattern, and I was finally breaking it. I gently closed the door, and that was the last real conversation we ever had. 3 months later, the divorce was finalized. Claire didn't even show up to the hearing. I felt only one thing: relief. My apartment started to feel like a real home, simple, quiet, and all mine. I still hear things about her occasionally. She got into a new relationship and apparently sabotaged it in the exact same way. She still tells people I cheated, but fewer and fewer people believe her. 2 months after the papers were signed, Leah sent me a text. We met for coffee. That coffee turned into dinner, then a long walk, and then a moment where everything just felt right. I always wondered what would have happened if we'd met first, Leah told me. We don't have to wonder anymore, I replied. We've been seeing each other for 4 months now. My ex-wife, predictably, had a meltdown when she found out, claiming we'd planned it all along. The irony is, Leah and I never crossed a single line until my marriage was legally and completely over. Comment: I wanted to share a few thoughts after we listened to that story together. It really highlights the quiet strength it takes to finally choose yourself. Setting boundaries is not an act of aggression. It is an act of self-respect. You cannot be responsible for someone else's insecurities, but you are always responsible for your own peace. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is walk away from a situation that constantly demands that you prove your worth. A true partnership is built on mutual trust and support, not control and suspicion. The healing process begins the moment you create a space where you can finally breathe again. Remember to be as kind to yourself as you are to the people you love. Your peace is worth protecting, and you deserve to feel safe, not scrutinized. I hope this story serves as a reminder of your own inner strength. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.